The Galactic Medical Conference on Nexus is typically as thrilling as watching bacteria replicate. Believe me, I've experienced both. As the top neurological specialist from the Zent system, I, Dr. Xerax, have been attending these annual gatherings for the last 30 orbital cycles. Every year, the same self-important doctors from various corners of the galaxy come together to showcase their so-called revolutionary research, which often turns out to be little more than slight enhancements to existing treatments. But this year it was different, and not just because someone finally decided to replace the quantum coffee machine filter after 3 decades. It was at the opening ceremony that I first saw her. Amidst the sea of tentacles, appendages, and diverse respiratory devices, there stood a human. Now, it wasn't unusual for humans to attend our conferences. They had been part of the galactic medical community for about 5 years, but something about this particular one caught my attention in a way that made my primary heart falter and my secondary heart race to pick up the slack. Dr. Elena Patel stood out like a blazing star against a pitch-black sky. While the rest of us wore our customary medical robes, mine in an especially vibrant shade of bioluminescent purple, I might add, she was dressed in something humans call a business suit. The bright white fabric contrasted sharply with her dark complexion, and her black hair was tied back in a style I would later discover was called a practical ponytail. I watched as she gracefully made her way through the crowd, expertly avoiding stepping on any of Dr. K's sensory tendrils, something even those of us equipped with motion sensors often fail to do. She moved with an assured, almost predatory elegance reminiscent of the apex predators from my home planet. Quite a specimen, isn't she? Dr. Yix Beta, my longtime colleague, appeared beside me, their crystalline form bending the light around them. I hear she graduated at the top of her class from some institution called Johns Hopkins. Apparently, it's very prestigious on Earth. I adjusted my optical sensors, zooming in on her to better observe her interactions. Another human doctor. How charming. I guess they're still trying to catch up to our medical breakthroughs. How embarrassingly wrong I was. If only I had known what that human would eventually do to revolutionize galactic medicine. Dr. Patel approached the registration desk, where Administrator Block was in the midst of his usual meltdown, struggling to organize the chaos. Even from where I stood, I could overhear fragments of their conversation. "I'm sorry, but your credentials appear unconventional." Block's translation matrix faltered under the stress of their frantic tentacle movements. "We usually require at least 3 centuries of experience for keynote speakers." Well, Dr. Patel responded with her trademark smile, the kind that was both disarmingly professional and yet somehow unnerving. "I suppose you'll have to make do with my modest 3 decades of experience in pioneering research on cross-species viral mutations." The way she spoke, so calm, so assured, sent a shiver down my spine. Here was this human, barely old enough to meet the sentient qualifications by some council standards, carrying herself as though she was already an integral part of the galaxy's medical elite. The most infuriating part? She was more than any of us could have imagined. Her expression remained composed, and her movements were seamless, as though she were solving each problem effortlessly. What began as curiosity soon turned into suspicion. Xerax engaged his neurostealth mode, designed to scan nearby workspaces without being detected. Through his visor's augmented reality interface, he could observe Grace's calculations. His silver eyes widened in disbelief as he saw that not only was she solving the problems correctly, but she was also solving them faster than anyone else in the room. Her approach was unorthodox, her thought processes alien, even to him, but the results were undeniable. The realization hit Xerax like a jolt of panic. He had always relied on his advanced technology and intellect to dominate in academic competitions. Yet here was a human, armed with nothing but basic tools, outperforming not just him, but possibly everyone in the room. The concept was both infuriating and fascinating. Determined to uncover her method, Xerax began replicating Grace's answers. His neurovisor transmitted her calculations directly to his device, allowing him to input them into his own exam. The move was risky. If he were caught, he would face instant disqualification. But desperation clouded his judgment. As he copied her work, he couldn't help but marvel at the elegance of Grace's solutions. They were unlike anything he had encountered, blending pure logic with an intuitive leap that defied traditional understanding. Grace, unaware of Xerax's actions, remained absorbed in her work. She had spent months preparing for this moment, drawing on the vast problem-solving traditions of Earth, from ancient Greek geometry to contemporary mathematical theories. She had immersed herself in the knowledge accumulated by her species. Her approach was both methodical and flexible, a testament to humanity's resilience and resourcefulness. As the first section of the exam came to a close, Grace placed her pencil down and reviewed her answers. Around her, other candidates appeared stressed, their faces lined with tension. Xerax, however, was in in a state of quiet panic. His neurovisor, overloaded by the complexity of Grace's calculations, had begun to overheat. Wisps of smoke emerged from the device, accompanied by a faint sizzling noise, betraying its malfunction. Desperate to avoid detection, Zarek turned off the visor and wiped the sweat from his brow. He glanced at Grace, who remained entirely unaware of the chaos her presence had stirred. For the first time in his life, Zarek felt genuinely outclassed. The sensation was both terrifying and oddly thrilling. When the proctor announced a short break, the candidates stood up, stretching and talking amongst themselves. Grace tucked her papers into her bag and calmly stepped away from her desk. Zarek, still filled with questions, watched her closely. Who was this human, and how had she developed such extraordinary abilities? More importantly, what did this mean for the future of the Academy and the galaxy? The brief intermission passed quickly, and Grace returned to her desk, her composure unchanged. The room was thick with tension as candidates whispered among themselves, speculating about the human who seemed unaffected by the exam's pressure. Zarek, still rattled from the first section, sat in silence at his station. His silver skin shimmered slightly under the hall's ambient light. His neurovisor, now powered off, lay beside him, a reminder of his earlier desperation. The second section of the exam began, presenting new challenges focused on real-time problem-solving and adaptive reasoning. Holographic scenarios appeared before the candidates, each presenting a unique crisis that required quick, inventive responses. The challenges ranged from navigating a ship through a meteor storm to brokering peace between warring alien factions. It wasn't just a test of intellect but of creativity, empathy, and quick decision-making. As the first scenario began, Grace leaned forward, her gaze intense and unwavering. The hologram before her depicted a damaged spacecraft stranded in the void of space, its life support systems rapidly failing. The task was to formulate a plan to repair the ship and save its crew using only the limited resources available. Grace's fingers flew across the interface, her mind whirring through potential solutions. She sketched diagrams and wrote equations, her method combining precise technical knowledge with an inventive approach to problem-solving. Zarek, observing from a few desks away, couldn't help but feel both frustrated and awestruck. While other candidates relied heavily on their advanced technology, Grace appeared to work as though the entire galaxy of knowledge was at her fingertips. She didn't stop to consult external databases or algorithms. Every decision she made seemed to flow naturally, as though she could already see the solution before even analyzing the problem. It was maddeningly efficient. Meanwhile, Zarek struggled to regain his balance. Without the help of his neurovisor, he was forced to rely on his own abilities. Though undeniably brilliant, the lack of his usual tools had shaken his confidence. The Itrans took great pride in their analytical skills, but Zarek realized, with growing unease, that his methodical, logic-driven approach was falling short compared to Grace's fluid, adaptive style. He continued to work diligently, crafting solutions that were technically sound but lacked the originality and nuance that defined Grace's work. As the scenarios continued, Grace's performance only improved. In the third challenge, which required candidates to simulate a peace negotiation between hostile alien species, she demonstrated an extraordinary ability to empathize with both sides. Her solution, which involved leveraging cultural traditions and shared histories, was elegant and profoundly effective. The holographic evaluators, programmed to assess the quality of each solution, awarded her the highest marks. Zarek, on the other hand, found himself struggling. His solutions, though carefully calculated, failed to consider the emotional and psychological dynamics that often influenced diplomatic outcomes. It became clear too late that his focus on pure logic had blinded him to the subtleties of interpersonal relationships, a weakness Grace seemed to exploit with ease. The fifth scenario proved to be the most challenging. Candidates were tasked with designing a sustainable ecosystem for a newly terraformed planet, balancing ecological, technological, and sociological factors. It required a comprehensive, holistic approach that few could master. Grace, however, tackled the task with her usual composed determination. She outlined a system that integrated advanced agricultural methods with renewable energy sources, achieving a harmonious balance that prioritized both environmental preservation and societal well-being. As she worked, Grace noticed the mounting tension in the room. The weight of the exam was taking its toll on many of the candidates, some of whom had resorted to desperate guesswork or outright resignation. She felt a pang of empathy for them, understanding the pressure of their aspirations. Yet, she couldn't let herself be distracted. This was her moment, her chance to prove that humanity deserved to stand among the galaxy's brightest minds. Meanwhile, Zarek was seething with frustration. His earlier confidence had completely eroded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Zarek glanced glanced at Grace again, his mind whirling with questions. How could a human, a species often dismissed as primitive, outperform some of the galaxy's most advanced beings? What was it about her that allowed her to thrive while others faltered? He couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing something extraordinary, something that defied everything he thought he knew about intelligence and capability. As the second section of the exam concluded, the evaluators began compiling the results. Holographic screens flashed provisional scores, and Grace's name consistently appeared at the top of the leaderboard. The other candidates observed her with a mixture of curiosity and resentment, their pride wounded by the realization that they had been outclassed by someone they had dismissed. Zarek, however, felt something different. Beneath his frustration and envy, there was a flicker of admiration, a reluctant acknowledgement of Grace's brilliance. When the proctor announced a short break, Grace stretched and gathered her materials, her expression serene despite the intensity of the exam. Zarek hesitated for a moment before approaching her, his silver eyes revealing a subtle unease. "Grace, isn't it?" he asked, his voice measured but tinged with curiosity. Grace turned to face him, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Yes," she responded, her tone polite but guarded. She recognized him as one of the Ultrana, a species known for their arrogance, and wondered what he wanted. Zarek hesitated, unsure of how to express the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. "Your performance," he began, choosing his words carefully. "It's remarkable. I don't understand how you're doing it." Grace smiled faintly, sensing the conflict behind his words. "It's not about the tools you use," she said simply. "It's about how you think." Her response left Zarek momentarily speechless. He had spent his entire life relying on technology to enhance his abilities, never considering the limitations it might impose. For the first time, he wondered if there was more to intelligence than sheer computational power. As the break ended and the candidates returned to their desks, Zarek found himself grappling with an unfamiliar feeling: humility. He realized that Grace's success wasn't just a reflection of her individual brilliance, but also a testament to humanity's unique perspective. And though he couldn't fully understand it yet, he felt an inexplicable urge to learn from her, to uncover the secrets of the human mind. As the final section of the Galactic Interstellar Academy's entrance exam began, the atmosphere in the expansive dome was thick with anticipation. The previous sections had tested mathematical prowess and adaptability, but this last challenge promised to push candidates beyond intellectual reasoning. It was the Academy's signature trial, a live simulation designed to evaluate creativity, leadership, and resilience under pressure. Grace sat at her floating desk, pencil poised over a blank sheet of paper. She had no idea what challenge awaited, but she had grown accustomed to the unpredictable nature of the exam. Around her, the other candidates prepared themselves, their minds sharp and focused, aware that the final test would be unlike anything they had faced before. Their tools hummed with latent energy as the candidates prepared for the final test. Zarek, now subdued and thoughtful, stole another glance at Grace from his station. The events of the previous sections had left a deep impression on him, and for the first time, he saw her not as a rival but as a mystery he was eager to solve. The proctor's voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and authoritative. "The final section will test your ability to collaborate within a team in a dynamic and unpredictable environment. Each of you will be assigned a role within a simulated crisis. Your task is to navigate the scenario, achieve the mission objectives, and ensure the survival of your team." As the proctor spoke, holographic pods descended from the ceiling, each one enveloping a candidate in a sphere of shimmering light. The pods were designed to transport their consciousness into a shared virtual reality, a system so advanced that every sensation felt utterly real. Grace inhaled deeply as the pod around her powered up, and in an instant, she found herself standing in a foreign landscape. The simulation had placed them on a desolate planet. The ground was cracked and barren, streaked with red and black rock, and jagged peaks loomed in the distance. A pale, sickly sun hung low in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows over the wasteland. The air was thin, and Grace could feel the strain in her lungs, though she knew it was all an illusion. She surveyed the area and saw her teammates, for other candidates, including Zarek, standing a few paces away. His usual confident demeanor had been replaced by cautious curiosity. A holographic projection materialized before them, displaying their mission briefing. "Your team has been stranded on a hostile planet after your ship crash landed. Local conditions are deteriorating rapidly, and a deadly storm storm is approaching. Your objectives are to locate shelter, repair the ship's communication system, and signal for rescue before the storm reaches your position. You have 1 galactic hour. As the simulation began, Grace quickly assessed the situation. Their team had a small cache of supplies, a basic toolkit, a portable scanner, and limited rations. Each candidate had been assigned a role based on their strengths. Grace was designated as the team strategist, tasked with planning the team's actions and ensuring everything worked smoothly. Zarek was assigned as the engineer, responsible for repairing the communication system. The others were a mix of analysts and field operatives, each bringing valuable skills to the table. Grace wasted no time in taking control. She gathered the team and laid out a preliminary plan. "We need to split into 2 groups," she said, her voice calm yet authoritative. "One team will scout for shelter and resources, while the other stays here to work on the communication system. Zarek, you're the most qualified to handle the repairs, so you'll lead the second group." Zarek hesitated, surprised by her confidence. He was used to taking the lead in situations like this, but Grace's decisiveness left little room for argument. He nodded, acknowledging her leadership, and turned his attention to the damaged communication system. The first team, led by Grace, set out across the rocky landscape in search of shelter. The scanner beeped intermittently, picking up faint traces of metallic deposits that could indicate a cave or some kind of underground structure. As they moved, Grace analyzed their surroundings carefully, noting potential hazards and escape routes. She maintained a calm focus, the weight of her role as strategist pressing her forward with purpose. Grace remained alert, her mind constantly working to predict the challenges that lay ahead. Back at the crash site, Zarek was hard at work, repairing the communication system. The device had suffered considerable damage during the crash, and several critical components were missing. Using the toolkit, he rigged together replacements, tapping into his extensive engineering knowledge. Yet, despite his skill, progress was slow. The storm clouds loomed ominously on the horizon, and the winds began to pick up, howling with a threatening intensity. Meanwhile, Grace's team discovered a series of caves nestled beneath a jagged cliff. The scanner confirmed that the caves were structurally stable and could provide adequate shelter from the storm. Grace quickly marked the location on her map and prepared to return to the crash site when a sudden movement caught her eye. A sleek, reptilian creature emerged from the shadows, its scales glinting in the dim light. It was a predator native to the planet, and it had been stalking them. Grace's heart raced as she motioned for her team to halt. The creature hissed, revealing sharp, obsidian-like teeth. It was agitated, and Grace realized they had unintentionally entered its territory. She had to act fast to prevent a dangerous confrontation. Drawing on her knowledge of Earth's wildlife, she crouched low, avoiding direct eye contact and mimicking submissive behavior. The creature hesitated, its aggressive posture softening. Slowly, Grace reached into her supply pack, retrieved a ration bar, and tossed it toward the creature. The predator sniffed the offering cautiously before retreating into the shadows, leaving them unharmed. When Grace and her team returned to the crash site, she briefed Zarek on their discovery. He listened intently, and Grace could see his earlier doubts about her leadership fading. "The repairs are almost done," he said, gesturing to the nearly restored communication system, "but time's running out. The storm will hit any minute." Grace thought through their options carefully. The caves were a safe distance away, but leaving the communication system unfinished could cost them their only chance at survival. "We'll split up again," she decided. "I'll lead half the team to the caves and secure the shelter. Zarek, you stay here with the others and finish the repairs. As soon as you're done, follow us to the caves." The plan was risky, but it was their only viable option. Grace and her group reached the caves just as the storm began to hit. The winds howled like a living thing, and the air was thick with swirling dust and debris. She quickly secured the entrance with makeshift barriers, using rocks and scavenged materials to reinforce their shelter. Despite the deafening noise of the storm, Grace remained focused, trusting Zarek to finish the repairs. Back at the crash site, Zarek worked with an urgency he hadn't felt before. His earlier frustration had been replaced by a steely determination, fueled by Grace's unwavering confidence in his abilities. The storm was closing in, but finally, he activated the communication system. A sharp, pulsing signal cut through the chaos of the storm. Relief washed over him as the system confirmed that the rescue beacon had been successfully deployed. With the repairs complete, Zarek and the remaining team members raced toward the caves, battling the fierce winds. When they finally reached the shelter, they were met by Grace, who had prepared a secure space for them to wait out the storm. Exhausted but victorious, the team huddled together, the storm raging outside. Their survival was a testament to their resilience, teamwork, and the bond they had formed during the trial. As the simulation ended, the candidates found themselves back in the exam exam hall, their holographic pods retracting. The proctor announced the results, and Grace's team was declared the top-performing group. Her leadership and ingenuity had not only ensured their success, but had also earned the respect of her peers, including Zarek, who now viewed her not as a rival, but as an equal. For Grace, the victory was about more than just personal achievement. It was proof that humanity had a place among the galaxy's brightest minds, a glimpse into the promise of what lay ahead. As she left the exam hall, a quiet sense of pride settled within her, knowing that she hadn't just passed the test, but had redefined what success truly meant. The exam had concluded, but its challenges still echoed in the minds of the candidates. As Grace exited the vast dome of the Galactic Interstellar Academy's testing facility, she was met with the sight of countless candidates gathered in groups, their conversations a chaotic blend of speculation and relief. Some were celebrating, others nursing their frustrations, but all seemed eager to discuss the unprecedented events of the day. Grace, however, walked quietly, her expression calm and introspective. She clutched a small bag, its weight now carrying the significance of her journey. Among the crowd, Zarek lingered at a distance, watching her. The events of the final simulation replayed in his mind, her clear decisions, the precision of her actions, and the undeniable leadership she had shown. She had shattered every assumption he had about humanity. While the official results had yet to be announced, Zarek knew without a doubt that Grace had proven herself as a force to be reckoned with. Despite the exhaustion from the grueling tests, Zarek felt an urge to speak to her again. He crossed the bustling courtyard, his tall frame easily cutting through the crowd. When he finally reached her, he hesitated, unsure how to start. The silence stretched for a moment before Grace turned to face him, her steady gaze meeting his. "You were remarkable back there," Zarek said, his voice low but sincere. "I've never seen anything like it." Grace tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Thank you," she replied. "You did well, too. The repairs you made were critical to our success." Zarek nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement, but the urge to understand still gnawed at him. "How did you do it? How did you stay so calm, so focused? Everyone else was struggling, yet you seemed unshaken." Grace considered his question carefully. It wasn't the first time someone had asked her that, though the context was certainly unique. "Earth teaches us resilience," she began. "We've had to adapt, to think creatively with limited resources. I've learned that staying calm isn't about suppressing fear. It's about channeling it into action." Her words struck Zarek more deeply than he cared to admit. The Ultrana were known for their intellect, their ability to process information at lightning speed, but they lacked the emotional adaptability Grace described. Zarek realized that his people's dependence on technology and logic had created blind spots, weaknesses that Grace had exploited with ease. As they walked through the courtyard, the Academy's towering spires casting long shadows across the plaza, Zarek found himself asking more questions. He wanted to understand her upbringing, her education, and what had driven her to pursue a place at the Academy. "I've never met anyone quite like you, Grace," he said. "What made you want to come here, to compete with beings who have centuries of experience?" Grace paused, looking out over the bustling courtyard, her mind drifting back to Earth. "It wasn't about competing," she replied thoughtfully. "It was about proving that humanity belongs, that we have something valuable to offer. We've survived a lot, and we've learned a lot along the way. I'm just trying to be part of something bigger, to show that Earth has its place in this vast galaxy." Zarek processed her words, his mind slowly shifting. He had always viewed his species as the pinnacle of intellect, relying on their technological advances to give them an edge. But Grace's perspective, her belief in the value of emotional intelligence and adaptability, was something entirely new to him. He found himself fascinated, eager to learn more. Grace spoke openly, sharing her passion for interstellar cultures and her desire to prove that humanity could thrive alongside the galaxy's most advanced species. Her words were full of conviction, reflecting a deep belief in humanity's potential. As the conversation flowed, a sudden loud chime rang through the air, signaling the announcement of the exam results. The plaza fell into an expectant silence, the tension palpable. A massive holographic screen appeared above them, displaying a list of names alongside their final rankings. Grace's heart raced as she scanned the list, her eyes darting over the names. When her gaze landed on her own, placed at the very top, she froze. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, a mix of relief, pride, and disbelief. She had done it. She had not only passed, but had outperformed every other candidate, an unprecedented achievement. Around her, murmurs of astonishment rippled through the crowd. A human had just outperformed every species in the galaxy, a feat never before achieved. Zarek's name appeared just beneath hers, securing second place. He looked at Grace, his emotions a swirl of envy and respect. There was no denying her brilliance. She had earned her place at the top, and he couldn't help but admire her for it. As the candidates began to disperse, many gathered around Grace to congratulate her or simply to satisfy their curiosity. The Ultrana, in particular, seemed torn, their pride shaken but undeniably impressed. Their species had long held the title of intellectual superiority, but now, in the presence of this human, that status had been challenged. Among the crowd, an official from the Academy approached Grace and Zarek, dressed in the formal robes of the Galactic Council. The official carried an air of authority that demanded attention. Grace, Zarek, the official began, addressing them both. Congratulations on your exceptional performance. The Council wishes to meet with you to discuss your future at the Academy. The words, both a recognition and a summons, sent a wave of seriousness through them. Grace and Zarek exchanged a glance, each understanding that this meeting would be more than just a formal greeting. The Galactic Council was known for its high standards and meticulous scrutiny, particularly for those who defied expectations. The meeting took place in a grand chamber, its walls adorned with intricate carvings and luminous displays depicting the Academy's long history. The council members sat in a semicircle, their faces a mix of curiosity and sternness. They questioned Grace and Zarek thoroughly, probing their motivations, their methods, and their approach to the challenges they had faced during the exam. Grace spoke with a calm confidence, answering each question with poise. She spoke of humanity's potential, highlighting the unique strengths Earth had cultivated over centuries: resilience, adaptability, and an inherent willingness to embrace the unknown. Her words resonated even with the more skeptical members of the council. Zarek, on the other hand, spoke of the invaluable lesson he had learned through the experience. He expressed a newfound respect for collaboration and the importance of learning from species outside of his own. His words carried the weight of someone who had been humbled, transformed by the trials they had undergone together. When the meeting concluded, the council made its decision. Both Grace and Zarek would be admitted to the Academy. Their exceptional performances were seen as a testament to the power of diversity, cooperation, and the strength of different perspectives. The decision was met with applause from the other candidates, signaling a significant shift in how the galaxy viewed humanity. As Grace and Zarek exited the chamber, a shared sense of accomplishment hung in the air between them. It was a quiet moment, but one that spoke volumes about the future they were now poised to shape together. They were no longer rivals but allies, bound by a shared experience that had challenged and reshaped them both. For Grace, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised challenges and opportunities far beyond what she had ever imagined. For Zarek, it was a chance to grow, to learn from someone who had shown him that strength could take many different forms. The Academy's gates loomed ahead, a symbol of the journey that awaited them. As they stepped forward together, Grace couldn't help but feel a spark of hope, a belief that humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning to unfold. "Smile," PL Ling said, her lips turning up. "Thank you," Grace replied. "You did well too. The repairs you made were critical to our success." Zarek nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement, but he couldn't shake the need to understand. "How did you do it? How did you stay so calm, so focused? Everyone else was struggling, and yet you seemed unshaken." Grace considered his question carefully. It wasn't the first time someone had asked her that, though the context was certainly unique. "Earth teaches us resilience," she began. "We've had to adapt, to think creatively with limited resources. I've learned that staying calm isn't about suppressing fear. It's about channeling it into action." Her words resonated with Zarek more than he cared to admit. The Ultrana were known for their intellect, their ability to process information at lightning speed, but they lacked the emotional adaptability that Grace described. Zarek realized that his people's reliance on technology and logic had created blind spots, weaknesses that Grace had exploited with ease. As they walked through the courtyard, the Academy's towering spires casting long shadows across the plaza, Zarek found himself asking more questions. He wanted to know about her upbringing, her education, and what had driven her to pursue a place at the Academy. Grace answered candidly, describing her fascination with interstellar cultures and her desire to prove that humanity could hold its own in a galaxy dominated by advanced species. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud chime echoing through the air, signaling the announcement of the exam results. The candidates fell silent, their their collective anticipation palpable. A massive holographic screen materialized above the plaza, displaying a list of names alongside their final rankings. Grace's heart pounded as she scanned the list, her eyes darting from name to name. When she saw her name at the very top, she froze, the realization hitting her like a wave, a mix of relief, pride, and disbelief washing over her. Around her, murmurs of astonishment rippled through the crowd. A human had not only passed the Galactic Interstellar Academy's entrance exam, but had outperformed every other candidate, a feat that had never been achieved before. Zarek's name appeared just below hers, securing the second position. He glanced at Grace, a mix of emotions swirling within him. There was a twinge of envy, but it was quickly overshadowed by a deep respect. Grace had earned her place, and Zarek couldn't deny the brilliance she had displayed. As the candidates dispersed, many approached Grace, some to congratulate her, others out of sheer curiosity. The Ultrana, in particular, seemed torn between admiration and disbelief. Their pride as a species had been challenged, yet they couldn't help but acknowledge the human who had surpassed their best. Among the crowd, an official from the Academy approached Grace and Zarek, dressed in the formal robes of the Galactic Council. The official exuded an air of authority. Grace, Zarek, the official began, addressing them both. Congratulations on your exceptional performance. The Council would like to meet with you to discuss your future at the Academy. The words were both an honor and a summons. Grace and Zarek exchanged a glance, both understanding that this meeting would be more than a mere formality. The Galactic Council was known for its rigorous standards and its tendency to scrutinize new candidates, especially those who defied expectations. The meeting took place in a grand chamber, adorned with intricate carvings and shimmering light displays that depicted the history of the Academy. The members of the Council sat in a semicircle, their faces a mix of curiosity and sternness. They questioned Grace and Zarek extensively, probing their motivations, their methods, and their perspectives on the challenges they had faced. Grace answered with calm confidence, impressing even the most skeptical council members. She spoke of humanity's potential, emphasizing the unique strengths that Earth's history had cultivated: resilience, adaptability, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. Zarek, for his part, expressed a newfound respect for collaboration and the importance of learning from other species. His words carried the weight of someone who had been humbled and transformed by the experience. When the meeting concluded, the council made its decision. Both Grace and Zarek would be admitted to the Academy. Their performances were a testament to the value of diversity and cooperation. The decision was met with applause from the other candidates, signaling a significant shift in the way the galaxy viewed humanity. As Grace and Zarek left the chamber, a sense of accomplishment hung in the air between them. They were no longer rivals but allies, bound by a shared experience that had challenged and reshaped them both. For Grace, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised challenges and opportunities beyond anything she had ever imagined. For Zarek, it was a chance to grow, to learn from someone who had shown him that strength could take many forms. The Academy's gates loomed ahead, a symbol of the journey that awaited them. As they stepped forward together, Grace couldn't help but feel a spark of hope, a belief that humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning to unfold.